Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to see that all of you have safely arrived in Florence. Welcome to Florence. I have heard that there were a few minor complications for some of the trips, but you're all here. In about an hour or so, Vice President Pascu and Anthony Teasdale will join us. They are currently visiting the library and the archives of the European Union at Villa Salviati. But we will start the workshop, the roundtable, in the meantime. And it is with great pleasure that I also welcome Brigid Laffan, the director of the Robert Schuman Center. The Robert Schuman Center is, as you have seen, the organizer of this roundtable, a co-organization with the European Parliament, in particular DG European Parliamentary Research Services. Brigid, I just hand over to you.
Thank you, Wilhelm. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the EUI and the Schuman Center to this roundtable on evidence and analysis in EU policy, concepts, practice and governance. And fittingly, given the topic, we're meeting in the Sala Europa, which is one of our very beautiful meeting rooms at the EUI. As part of the MOU that we have with the European Parliament, we're committed to having, at a minimum, 2 policy dialogues each year on very different topics. We've done dialogues on jihadism, on the European elections, on all sorts of topics. And this one, planning and assessing EU policies, is, in my view, the first macro public policy workshop that we've done. I'd particularly like to thank Wilhelm Lehmanns, who's the institutional fellow, the Parliament's institutional fellow here at the Schuman Center, and Gabi Umbach, my colleague, who is director of the Global Stat. Both of them are the scientific coordinators, and it is thanks to them that they have put together such a good program and brought us all here together. Evidence-based policy making, the idea behind evidence-based policy making is certainly part of a turn in public policy making, broadly the mid-90s, early 2000s, that sought to enhance the rational dimension of policy making and to contain what one might argue as the muddling through processes associated with much of what passes for policy making. Evidence-based policy making is linked to ideas of better policy making, better regulation, of grounding public policy making in more reliable knowledge of what might or does work. And clearly underlying all of this is a belief in the importance of reason to problem solving. Like all turns in the social sciences, we must retain a critical perspective. How is evidence produced? Who produces it? How is it screened? That's really important because so many of the public policy problems we face in the world today are hard problems. They're difficult, and there has to be attention to all kinds of evidence, even if that evidence is uncomfortable to the norms, values, and prevailing paradigms of those making policy. And that's the tricky bit, because cognitively, human nature is such that we're inclined to use the evidence that reinforces the norms and beliefs that we have already. And certainly one of the big lessons I take from the lead up to the Great Recession is the absence of sufficient disturbance in the policy-making system, absence of sufficient questioning within our processes of public policy making, absence of sufficient numbers of discordant voices. Either the discordant voices weren't there, or if there, they were screened out. So I think we need to be extremely open to interrogating not just the benefits of evidence-based policy making, but also to be attentive to the dark side of the moon. And of course, evidence matters. It does lead to better policy making, but its limits have also got to be acknowledged. And as a political scientist, I would argue that power and politics can never and should never be drained from any system of public policy. The idea that somehow or other that there are perfect solutions to complex problems is erroneous, and therefore we should always be attentive to those questions of power and politics, because it's through politics, particularly in public policy, that you get adequate legitimacy and accountability. So on that note, not a sceptical note, but a note that asks us to continue to be critical of what passes for evidence-based policy making, I'll hand back to the chair of the first session.